help in the course of our day. I said this morning, it's already afternoon. So whenever you're tuning in, it's great. We got Rob MacArthur with us today. He is an elder here at Grace and a great friend on the journey. Rob, thank you for coming today.
Well, thank you too, Jason. I appreciate that. I want to first of all say on behalf of
Oh, no, it's my intro.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go for it. I'm just kidding.
No, I wanted to thank you and Ken and the staff. Really, y'all are doing such an awesome job of presenting Daily Grace. It's such a great thing. It's a great series for our church family.
Well,
So
thank
you.
you.
For doing that.
Yeah, thank you. It is fun. It's been fun to be pushed out of our comfort zone and to be part of keeping us connected as the body at a time when we're not connected in person. Just by way of introduction, in case you're tuning in and don't know exactly who Rob is, you remember if you were watching on Monday, Kent and I on the Daily Grace talked about the fact that Grace has elders and we shepherd through elders. And that's really, Rob is one of our first elders and he still is investing in the body here at Grace. And so we're so thankful for that. Before we talk about parenting, which we're going to talk about with Dr. Rob in a second, let's talk about you for a second. Let's just bring us up to date. How are you and Paula doing during these this kind of coronavirus shutdown mode?
I think we're blessed. Paul and I are doing well. We're very happy. In fact, I'm learning how to do some more cooking. I've actually gone back. I need to lose some weight. I subscribe to a keto diet now, and so basically I'm cooking more. I actually had supper for Paula when she came back from Jacksonville last night.
Nice. So she also goes to Jacksonville because her dad's there.
Right. 97 years old. She goes down usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, and stopped doing that for a while just with COVID.
Right.
But now we're feeling comfortable to do that.
Good, because you're protecting who you're around. And 97, isn't that amazing, Mr. Humphreys? Well, also you're a dentist, and I can guarantee you this is because I know how hard you work and how diligent you are. This is the longest period of time in your 40 years of dentistry that you haven't seen a full slate of patients. What is that like, that new rhythm like professionally?
It's very challenging. I'm ready to get back to work, Jason, to be honest with you. But I got to say, during this time, it's been healthy. We've been seeing emergencies, Dr. Witt and I have together, and it's been a big asset. We're trying to basically prevent people from having to go to the ED departments at hospitals.
Yeah.
But also, in many ways, it's really challenging because Dr. Witt just bought the practice from me at the end of January. And in so doing that, can you imagine being a new business owner?
Yeah.
And actually going through COVID like this, knowing that you've got mortgages to pay, that sort of thing. So, but he's done a great job of actually listening to webinars daily.
Yeah.
He's secured a PPP loan, and he's also just been great at actually arranging for the protocols that we'll take over as a staff when we get back and return seeing patients. So I'm very proud of him. He's really stepped up to a great degree.
And I tell you what,
God's grace.
He is a great dentist because I've seen him a few times, and he is a fantastic dentist, Dr. Witt. Just like you.
But I'm ready to get back to work. I really miss it.
You're not swinging the golf clubs. Okay, so now here's the deal. What we know about you, if we're part of the body here at Grace, is that you, Dr. Rob, have a heart for marriages and a heart for families and home life and good parenting. Now, where does that come from in your background?
Well, I came from a very dysfunctional family, basically. Mom and dad divorced when I was 3, and I realized that if things were going to be different for my life, in fact, I would cry myself to sleep sometimes because I just hated seeing so much anger and bitterness in my family growing up. And it actually just boiled over into their relationships with step-parents as well. So in that regards, I realized I needed to bring something to the table in our marriage, my marriage with Paula. Paula came from a very good, loving family, but I really knew I needed training in how to become a better husband and a father.
Right, because you didn't have the experience, the positive experience sort of to incorporate. You knew what you wanted to avoid, but you didn't know how to. So the training is what brought you to a point of being able to play play at the high level. Let me just say that in a godly way, be married to Paula. So what has been happening before coronavirus is you and Paula have been facilitating or leading about 50 of us in a Sunday evening parenting class. How have you found that going? What feedback have you received from folks in the class?
Well, I think it's been going really well. It was up to that point.
Yeah.
Right there. The great thing about it is we've got great materials through Family Life with the Art of Parenting video series that we're using. as a means by which to actually receive teaching and in the way of skills and just understanding principles. And then we also have the opportunity to actually break up into small groups, four groups. And that really has facilitated interaction, just increasing our communication and also our understanding and where we are together as individual parents and our relationships with our kids right there. So that's been a big help. Also, the feedback we're getting is such that I've just had, really, if I could just share names, but I won't, but basically just some great emails and just a lot of folks just saying things like, this has been perfect timing for our marriage and for our family as well, our relationships with our kids. It has given us an opportunity to really focus on being intentional in our discipleship in the home, realizing that we need to start family devotions, realizing we need to pray together out loud, not just at supper, but also just together in our communication around the table, around the living room. What we watch and discuss those movies that we might see during COVID. So a lot of folks have also said things like, this has been helpful for me just realizing just how important marriage is, because what we do in our marriage, how we treat one another in our marriage relates a lot to what our kids see modeled from us.
We are in the class, Susan and I, and when it is great when we watch the video or when we have sort of the all 40, 50 of us kind of a little bit of discussion once in a while. But then when we do go into our small groups, those are some great conversations that we have based on what we've all just seen. And there's some prompt questions, but also the conversations are free-flowing. I think it's been really helpful for all of us just to sort of think and reconsider and learn something new and training, like you say. Let me ask you, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Paul and I are grandparents too, with 3 young little boys. And I tell you, this has been so helpful because I realize how much we need the training ourselves. Paul and I don't have it all together. We're just facilitating this, I can assure you. But we've learned even more. And I do see that is something that we as Christians should really understand. We're always going to be in a process of learning and growing in our relationship with Jesus, but also in our relationship and how we can become better disciples and how we manage our relationships with our marriages and also with our kids.
It's amazing. I shared this with you last night at the elders meeting on the Zoom. Elders meeting on Zoom calls. It's interesting. But I've been in the Proverbs in my quiet times, and there's so much training. Like if you don't think you know it all, but you're ready to learn, the Proverbs are just chock full of practical stuff for daily life. Well, let me get you to reflect back before you were a grandparent, but to the time when you did have your girls in the home, because maybe there's a few nuggets that could help us here who are watching. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that were the most helpful in your parenting and bringing up the girls, the most life impacting for them and for you? I mean, what are some of the things that looking back, that was something that really was a game changer?
That's a great question, Jason. I appreciate you asking that right there. First of all, I really think we have to really start by having a foundation of active prayer. I mean, that goes with anything we do in ministry and also just in our lives, in our walk with Jesus. Just understanding that we need to be praying actively for our marriages to be healthy, that we're understanding what it really means to love, to accept, to forgive one another, to build and maintain relationships like that. But certainly praying for our kids at whatever stage of life that they are in, helping them to understand that and praying that God would bless them in his relationship with them, that they would really seek the Lord, that they would also ask God to actually help them to refrain from succumbing to temptations, which are certainly out there in our wicked world that we live in today.
Well, in my wicked heart.
Wicked heart.
It's not just the world.
So that's certainly an aspect that I think is very important right there. I have to say, my wife, Paula, has been such a blessing to me all through these years, considering my past history right there. One thing in our just discussions, she's always said, honey, we need to focus on being great listeners. We need to really focus on really listening to what they say and not always thinking about how to give instruction to them. I think my role has been one of which I've often give a knee-jerk reaction. I've got to fix them, which is a typical male response. And I have to say, the more I talk to some of the guys in our parenting class, the more I realize that that's an issue for a lot of guys and husbands. there's a tendency not to listen well, but to try to fix and to give instruction too quickly, too often. Instead, we need to be thinking about, how do I ask better questions? For example, like with Kristen, I would say, Kristen, tell me how you're feeling or what you're thinking about this situation. The goal there is to get them to process what they're feeling, what they're thinking about a particular situation or challenge that they're facing or a problem, and to get them opening up about that, where they're talking out loud to you, which is building your relationship, your emotional bank with them as you're making deposits into their lives right there. So in that regards right there, it helps them to also just develop better interpersonal communication and also begin to see praying before the Lord for solutions to those problems, that they've learned to depend upon Jesus. It's such a beautiful thing that I've seen even now, where Paula will pray with Kristen and Lori over the phone about a challenge that they're facing at work or at a home. So that's, I think, a great important thing. Paula says, being a great listener, we think about that as be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. That's really important. But in that situation, she said also, it's important to be present, to really be engaged and focused with what and who they are. Not only just supporting them in their activities, with school activities, after school activities, that sort of thing, but also just engage with them in such a way as you're not just listening to or looking at your cell phone or looking at a magazine or something like that, but really focused on when they're talking to you, you're communicating. That's really important because that builds into their lives a sense of worth and a sense of acceptance that they really need right there, and along every stage of their development. So I think that's important right there too. Early on in our parenting, Paul and I had the privilege to facilitate a DVD series with Josh McDowell. It was How to Be a Hero to Your Kids. And one of the equations that they gave as a principle was this adage of rules without relationship equals rebellion. It's really the gospel story if you think through this. And certainly this one equation gives you enough material for a sermon. But in the short way of looking at this right there, I think about it, while I think that strong and consistent discipline is very important in building our kids and training them and not offering no discipline at all or too strict a discipline, I do think that relationship building is probably as critical to the equation as anything.
Absolutely.
With that in mind is understanding that basically they need to know that they're unconditionally loved and accepted for who they are, not for what they do, not how they perform. And so it's really, really important that we gather that because the culture teaches us, I love you, I like you, or whatever, because of your performance right there. And so we see that that's really a problem right there too. So when that happens right there, there's a greater chance of our kids becoming more rebellious if we don't understand that equation right there.
That's good.
God should be the core of our parenting. But it relates to the fact, the more I go through this course myself, I begin to see more and more that parenting is not so much about parenting as it is about who I am in Christ Jesus. How am I growing as a Christian myself? How is my marriage growing? Because behind closed doors, what happens behind those closed doors models a lot. Our marriages model a lot for our kids. And if they're not healthy, we need help. And we need to lower the pride quotient and say, please help me, God. But help me, body of Christ. Help me, staff. Help me, elders. Please help me in this situation right there because I need help. And then submit to biblical training in that regards right there.
Rob, these are really good. Prayer as a centerpiece, listening and being present to your kids, that great idea that if you only focus on rules and you don't focus on relationships, that's where rebellion can come, and then like really focusing on or really making sure, husband and wife, that's going to spill over. So when you guys are loving the Lord and loving each other, it's going to help a lot with the children. Those are some great principles. Thank you for sharing them with us. We just have a couple of minutes left. Let's move to resources. I know you love a good book or a good training, and I love hearing your story that it's because you didn't have that growing up. But maybe you have a couple of resources super quickly. Give them to us.
Well, I think obviously what we're using right now, the Family Life's Art of Parenting handbook has been great. Intentional Parenting by Doug Fields Doug and Kathy Fields is really a great book resource as well.
So Intentional Parenting by Doug and Kathy Fields. And that's kind of like a resource book we could order and buy.
That's right. And it's also, part of that is also on that USB flash drive that we presented to
Yeah,
all
to
the people
class.
participating in class. I have not read this, but I know his work because we've used Emerson Eggert's Love and Respect in the Family. We need respect as parents, but they need love. And so it's, again, about relationships right there. Very important right there, too.
Fantastic. And that's pretty new, that book.
That is a new book,
Yeah.
relatively new book.
So Intentional Parenting by Doug Fields, the Emerson Eggerichs, Love and Respect in the Family, as well as The Art of Parenting, which is what we're using, what you're leading us through with the parenting class.
And 5 love languages for children, for young people, with Dr. Gary Chapman.
Yeah, Gary Chapman's 5 love languages for kids. These are great. Rob, thank you for taking the time to come in today and sort of help all of us just think again about parenting. Honestly, go back to those few things Rob mentioned. That's fantastic in terms of prayer and listening and presence and all that kind of stuff. When Susan and I first came to Grace, what we discovered was a group of people who really were raising their kids to love and honor the Lord. And it wasn't perfect, and nobody was pretending it was, and it wasn't on a pedestal. But there was a group of people together with sort of an overlapping set of how do we do this so that children really understand who God is and what God's calling them to in the world. And we've learned a lot about parenting, and we've grown a lot by being in this body of believers. So our hope is that you too, as you're part of this body, you'll step out past your own experiences or lack of, and you'll grow into not only training, but also modeling and mentoring folks like Dr. Robin Paula, Jimbo and Joan, other elders and so forth, and just see how God can help all of us raise our kids in the joy of the Lord and the fear of the Lord. Thank you for joining us on the Daily Grace. Thank you for coming, Rob.
Thank you, Jason.
And we'll see you back here tomorrow for Word and Worship. Blessings.
Amen.
As if I